more early enrollees are on the way for Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks in spring football. And I say more, and let's think about this. Oregon had, I think the number was 26 newcomers joined this Oregon football team for the start of spring football. That's transfers, that's early enrollees from the high school level. So we're just seeing a massive roster overhaul for the Ducks here in the offseason, and it's something that is becoming increasingly normalized in college football, right? You're just seeing mass waves of change, mass waves of exodus, if that's the right word. Exodi? No, it's definitely not the word. But you're seeing a lot of movement is the point that I'm making along these rosters across the country. And for Oregon to have as many new guys as they did was huge, because Dan Lanning kind of likened it to almost the equivalent of a redshirt year, or like an extra year for guys who have never been at Oregon before, talking about the value of enrolling early, getting guys up to the college speed, getting them in the weight program, getting them to have their head in the playbook. Even if they're not going to be playing major roles, you need guys that know the plays, know what's going on, so that because they can have their name called at any time. And then you have the other end of the spectrum that I've talked about plenty, just being a college athlete, being a college student. I think that the grind, if you've gone to college, you know that the grind is a lot different than when you were in high school. So much more responsibility is on you. The buck stops with you. So that's a big part of it. So Oregon had a number of really, really talented guys that we got to kind of see for the first time out there on the practice fields in that green and yellow. We saw Mateo Uyunglele. We saw Tyler Turner. We saw Tatum Tuioti. Austin Novosad, the early enrollee quarterback from Dripping Springs, Texas in the 2023 class. He was there. He was a longtime Baylor commit, if you'll remember. Dante Dowdell, Jaden Lamar, Cole Martin. Just a couple names that are already enrolled and on campus for Oregon as the Ducks make their way through spring practice. But more is on the way, fortunately for Oregon, seeing that they are on the quarter system. This is going to allow them to add a couple more guys at the start of next term to join the team in, really the bulk of spring football practice. We've been able to confirm 2 guys that are going to be joining the Ducks for spring practice from the 2023 class. That's defensive back Solomon Davis from Charter Oaks in Covina, California, and linebacker Jerry Mixon from Sacred Heart Cathedral in San Francisco, California. Jerry Mixon also played basketball for the Irish, and I want to say they might have won a state title or at least gone very far in the playoffs. So that's a multi-sport guy. Solomon Davis has been tabbed as a sleeper by some recruiting experts in Oregon's 2023 class. I want to say it was Greg Biggins with 247 who tabbed him as a sleeper in the class. And I'm feeling inclined to agree. I wasn't able to see Solomon play in 2022 and this, in his senior season, but just after talking to the guy, talking to his father, talking to his coaches, everyone just had nothing but good things to say about him. And he seems like a very cerebral guy, someone who has a great, great feel for the game. And is probably going to come to Oregon with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, because he kind of flew under the radar in this recruiting class that signed a lot of corners. Cole Martin, who I already mentioned, he's already at Oregon. Dalen Austin's another big name. Roderick Pleasant. You have names like that, and maybe you kind of forget about Solomon Davis a little bit. But I mean, he's a great guy, great kid, and he's an awesome player who's going to arrive at Oregon probably feeling like he has something to prove. But I think that the sky's the limit for him, and Oregon needs the help at cornerback, right? They need the help at corner with Gonzalez going off to the NFL and pretty much almost every opponent they faced last year just dicing them up through the air. So the passing defense really needs to improve for the Ducks in 2023, and Solomon Davis could find himself playing a big part of that. And then Jerry Mixon is another guy that I think should be able to try to at least compete for some snaps next year. I'm not going to say that I think he's going to start, but like I said earlier on, when we were talking about Jamal Hill potentially changing positions, linebacker is, especially on the inside, is not a particularly deep group for the Ducks. And I don't think that there's a lot of guys that have spots locked down in that too deep, right? I think you probably have Justin Jacobs and you have Jeffrey Bossa, Keith Brown as some of your primary guys, but After that, it's kind of a toss-up. You have Connor Soley, who comes in from Arizona State. He's a name that also, is worth mentioning at that spot along the linebacker group. So it's going to be kind of cool. You definitely have some uncertainty at a couple of different groups, but this is why recruiting is fun. You get to see what these guys are like in high school, and then see who can't make that jump to the college level, or maybe they don't make the jump right away, and then they kind of, you got to just develop them, right? That's a big part of it. You got to, oh shoot, I'm trying to think of what it was. I saw it on Demetrius Martin's Twitter the other day. It was like, find them, recruit them, sign them, develop them, something like that. It was like a very cool 3-step graphic, but that kind of, backs up my point a little bit here as we're talking about that, and where some of these guys ultimately find themselves on the depth chart come 2023. We're only in the spring, first 2 practices of spring, so don't have too much of a depth chart, but we can kind of take our best guess. And then 2 more names to keep an eye on. I don't think they've been confirmed to me, but I wouldn't be surprised if they showed up and were enrolled for spring practice. I'm talking about Dalen Austin, the 2023 corner out of Long Beach Poly. From some of the sources that I've talked to, I heard that he already graduated from Long Beach Poly. So the next step would kind of just logically be enrolling at the University of Oregon. So keep an eye out for Dalen Austin. He could be a new addition for the Ducks when they reconvene to resume spring practice. And then also former Ole Miss safety Taishim Johnson. I would think that Oregon would probably want to get him up and rolling in this spring practice. He's the only guy that the Ducks signed out of the transfer portal that has not enrolled and joined the team. So probably, again, it makes sense to think that they would be able to get Taishim Johnson on campus, rocking and rolling for the remainder of spring practice. He is the last or the most recent transfer portal guy to commit to the Ducks. So that would probably explain why he hasn't joined the team just yet. But even with so many new faces, so many newcomers for Dan Lanning and the Ducks in spring football, more early enrollees are on the way.